not forsake me, oh my crypto, on this our pumping day. Do not forsake me, oh my crypto. Hardo, hardo, all along. I do not know what fate awaits me. I only know I must be brave, for I must face a market that hates me, or sell a coward, a craven coward, or sell a coward and get wrecked. Oh, to be torn between bull and rug pull when I'm wed to you in blockchain vows. Must I now face this wicked sailor whose scams can crash us down? Do not forsake me, oh my crypto, on this our pumping day. Do not forsake me, oh my crypto. Stake away. He made a vow while in his Lambo that he would grab up all the gains. Now you must face him in his telegram and carry on, 'cause that's your game. Do not forsake me, oh my crypto, though you're depressing now. They tell me you are depreciating. You made that vow when I invested. What should I do if you were in my wallet? What should I do? I'd be a coward too. Oh, look at that big chart move along near an all-time low. Why should I fight it? Can't help it. Though a coward may be in your eyes, all that I ask is keep on mooning till he is done and sees the rise. Do not forsake me, oh my crypto, on this our pumping day. Do not forsake me, oh my crypto.
Pump, pump and dump.
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 And hey everyone, we'll officially roll the intro in just a second here, but in the meantime, hi. We were just talking about the songs, the intro songs for these things. And yeah, this anyone in the comments who's listening, even if you're listening after, comment if you remember what this intro song was based off of, and also where you heard it. So it should be super easy to figure out for those who know, but just give something for you guys to do instead of just be passively listening. But yeah, like how many podcasts do you have to comb through, Mark, on a typical basis?
Well, including the spaces, probably like a half a dozen, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's crypto, and most of these podcasts, crypto and AI, most of these podcasts end up being like 90 minutes to 3 hours. So,
yeah, it was, yeah, the 3 hour ones are, I feel attacked because those are mine. Although there was that fun one on the quantum computing. Do you remember the one where Dr. Carl Crater came on and was talking to, he was kind of a quantum bear. and then he did some calculations, and he was just like, oh, this is really bad. Oh, this is no good. And then he just like, I gotta go, and he left.
Yeah.
Since then, I have heard him say, oh yeah, and I redid them again, and I'm back to being a quantum bear. I still don't think it's gonna happen. Oh, okay. So,
Well, good.
the industry though is really set on this is a problem if you don't fix this. So most projects are doing some kind of post quantum thing purely for that's the way the industry goes. Kind of like you need to fix your emissions or your carbon footprint, or it's like one of those kinds of things that like you have to sort of do or you're excluded. And so I guess it's as long as the trade-offs aren't too bad, and maybe it's a better safe than sorry. Again, this is such an anti-scientific take, which frustrates people who know what they're talking about.
Well, I mean, it's a PR move that I can get behind, like the PR of it, you know, like it's just like whenever there was an issue with like proof of work, and Vitalik's like, well, let's just move over to, you know, proof of stake. You know, like I didn't really agree that it was necessity, because I buy the narrative around mining, and I buy the narrative around why it's better than proof of stake if you're trying to be egalitarian. But again, I'm not Vitalik. It's not my network, and it helped them get certain types of adoption they would not have otherwise gotten by being more green than Bitcoin. And you know what? That's fine. You know, same thing with quantum. Like, look. You look at the discourse on LinkedIn. That's the average person, and everybody on LinkedIn is like, "Oh, Bitcoin's dead tomorrow. Every crypto is dead tomorrow unless they have a quantum strategy." Like, okay, I guess we need a quantum strategy then.
Yeah, I think it's a quantum strategy because it's not anything technical. Because I have noticed a lot of bull posting about Zcash, and again, everyone here should know that I'm a fan of Zcash. Right, it's one of the projects I like more. My criticism is they're always, yeah, if quantum not a threat for Zcash, they got nothing right now. It's just, but we will fix it. Therefore, it's like you identify as post-quantum, therefore you are. It's like you don't have to actually be post-quantum. You just have to identify as it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. You know, it is what it is. Like I feel like there's there's a line to be walked, and I'm not against conformity to a meme when it doesn't compromise a value, and being quantum safe doesn't necessarily compromise a cypherpunk value. You know, it might be a waste of time and energy and development man hours, you know, depending on your perspective and what you believe about the math. But I mean, there's nothing that I can say. There's nothing at all that's anti-cypherpunk with having a quantum strategy, especially if it gets you better adoption.
Yeah, I mean, it's all like trade-offs with work. Now the thing is, right now we're getting into the era of AI non-slop, where now, as of like the Zcash exploit, we're seeing that frontier-ish, I wouldn't even say super frontier model, but frontier-ish models are able to find things that years and millions of dollars of security auditors can't find. And so the ability to, it's not vibe coding, but like the ability to port a quantum
Vibe
strategy.
audit.
Yeah. But or just or intelligently vibe code. A complete quantum implementation in like weeks or months, and then make it relatively secure via the vibe audits. It's like now everyone can, for just a little extra, have, whether it's the quantum strategy or the private ZK stuff or the whatever. And so it's actually funny because there have been some features that we have not, mostly around multi-party master nodes that in the Dash network have just not been prioritized for years because of other things. And then we got some community members wanting to, so they just vibe coded up some implementations that then now like the core developers are looking at and they're fixing issues with and vibe coding up their own version, and now it's like getting in when it was like, oh, we don't have time. Those will detour us from our roadmap, and then some community members are like, well, do it ourselves. Well, all of a sudden it's happening, and just the ability to move forward is which is the saddest thing, is that Bitcoin is so anti-competitive these days in terms of that. Right when you could easily do we'll take the best ideas from all the altcoins and merge them in. This is the golden era of that, but they're just not in a cultural position to take advantage of that.
Oh yeah. Well, I would say don't get me started, but that's going to be about a quarter of the show, I think, is that particular problem,
Well,
that ossified culture that exists.
Let's hit the official intro and then start powering through the actual stories. All right, 3, 2, 1, go.
Sure.
So hey everyone, and happy Friday, and officially welcome to the Digital Cash Rundown. This is episode 229. 229 plus weeks I've been doing this. This is one of those during the thick of the uncertain times when I started doing this live show, and just it's been weekly except for when I'm traveling ever since. So this is definitely disproves Karl Marx's labor theory of value, because I'm still getting about the same views as when I started, despite so much work I put into this. But hey, I value it, so that's
there you go.
It's fine. It's fun. I'm joined by the one and only Rizzn, or Mark Hopkins. I always put your name as Mark Rizzn Hopkins, even though it's not. It's a mixing pseudonym with Nim. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's how I had to merge my names when I did full-time journalism as well. So it's not incorrect.
Yeah, it's also one of those things where I do like it when people have my wife is in politics, right? And no one has pseudonyms there. They just have their name. And so in crypto or gaming or just some of these weird tech fields, even like respectable people who are fully doxed have like a handle they go by sometimes. And so it always makes me happy when handlers, let's say, they get their actual full handle on X without anyone taking it. And so, for example, obviously Rizzn, it's been there forever. The Desert Lynx, I got it when there was nothing like that. It was 2011 or 12 maybe. And then Zuko is just Zuko. And even some sketchy, like Fluffy Pony, spit on his grave. He's not dead, whatever. But I'm not a fan of that guy. But he got Fluffy Pony ZA for South Africa, and he had to work his way up to get the actual Fluffy Pony. So
speaking of good usernames, Death of a Giant this week. I'm sure you saw some of my retweets. Ohm Malik, Giga Ohm. His handle is just OM, or was OM, I should say. It's still there, but he's not. He passed this week. If he's probably not super well known in crypto circles, but for startup people, Silicon Valley people, blogging people, he was one of the greats that popularized blogging as a format. Wow. Ran a tech blog and a conference series, and was very tied in with Dave Weiner and Kevin Marks and Mike Arrington, people that were John Furrier, one of my old partners, people that were instrumental in the idea of podcasting and RSS at its foundation. Wow. And wound up after he sold Giga Ohm, his blog, he sold it and became a general partner at True Ventures, a VC firm out in the Valley.
Yeah, well, I did not see that, even though I've been on X a lot, because your posts just don't show up sometimes. And that's not you. That's X has been very finicky these days. I consistently get a well-performing post every week or two forever, but the landscape of how that works has been very different. I used to get all my posts would get 20, 30 plus likes and 1,000 impressions at least, and then you'd get a banger that pops off. Now almost all my stuff does, or a lot of my stuff does really poorly, and then my bangers still pop off. But and it's always like I'm annoyed at how algorithmified it is these days. Where
Yeah,
I just want
something's
to see the
happened. Like
people.
you and I used to pop up at each other's timelines quite a bit, and a lot of the people that that I would associate with your circle seem to be on my timeline and I on theirs. But I think I have. It's been. I'm trying to think. The last time I saw a tweet of yours that was on the general timeline, it's been a minute. Kind of weird.
Yeah. And
Even though I've been on like your spaces recently too.
Yeah, it's weird because I have also like I'm doing like whatever on these posts, but I had a post this week that did like 33,000 impressions, 360 likes. Like it did well, and it just did not show up in your timeline at all. I guess it was the one about New Hampshire taxes, and so I don't know if you saw that. If it doesn't ring an immediate bell, then it failed. Because New Hampshire is the only state in the U.S. that has no broad-based sales or income tax, and so I just did a map showing like the ones with no sales tax, no income tax, no both, and they just did really well, and people don't see it. And also, I comment on I started cyberbullying the Sailorites, and then that's like 80% of what I see this week, because now it's just like, oh, you like this. You only like this, so now it's just someone.
Yeah, that's the thing that that the algorithms always get wrong is you accidentally or hate engage on a topic because it pisses you off, and then like, oh, you you want more of this? There's a lot more where this came from. So
yes, the swings are pretty dramatic. Yeah. Now I have to say, someone needs to open source the TikTok algorithm, because TikTok's like about the only slop I consume, as far as like everything tends to be pretty locked down, open source type stuff, or there's obviously X, but it's like extra work and stuff. It's like the guilty pleasure is TikTok, and the algorithm there is always stellar in terms of it's very surveillance-y, pretty damn surveillance-y in fact, but the algorithm is very good at curating a timeline around what your interests are in, and keeping it always to where it's always stuff you like, and floating new things in once in a while. Just floating them by and see if you like it. If you don't really like it, then they won't show you more. Yeah. But if you do, you'll show you a little bit more, but it won't be your entire thing. And then some pieces of content will just kind of disappear from your timeline for a while, and then they'll come back in a few weeks. And it's very organic, and it's also creepily like time dependent. Like at night, if I'm trying to go to sleep, it always hits this like dreamcore type stuff, and like it's just like it knows when I'm, it knows when you've been sleeping. It knows when.
That's pretty sophisticated. Yeah, I haven't used TikTok in a minute. Instagram. Instagram is where I look at my vertical content mostly, and one of my friends calls Instagram. What is it? Age to perfection TikToks. Like you're going to get it first on TikTok, but like when it's been polished and refined and de-slopified, you're going to get it on Instagram when everybody else has already seen it.
I call it boomer talk because that's like saying, that's just like saying you read about all the best crypto headlines in the Wall Street Journal. Wow. Like by the time it filters down there, maybe it's this weird sensationalist nonsense goes away, but you don't get any of the alpha. And so TikTok is full of alpha. But enough about TikTok. Let's talk about people losing money. That's a good one.
Sure.
So Secondify. Let me hit this up here. So they posted this important security update. They had an incident where lots of people started losing their Cardano. So Secondify is a Cardano wallet app. Now, it says, please do not restore your recovery phrase into another Cardano wallet. This does not mitigate the security risk. Your keys are derived from recovery, not the app. Restoring the same phrase is another thing. Creates identical address with identical exposure. Compromised thing is a key. The compromised address is not the interfaces that you're using. Anyway. So there's that. That's the big thing. And one thing I should say as we start to get through this initial grouping of commentary, the reason I paid attention to this at all, other than it's just interesting, is there's an app called XDeFi Wallet. I'm sure you remember that one from back in the day. Now it's called Control Wallet. It's like For me, it was the big MetaMask style wallet that also supported UTXO chains. And I know the CEO. I moderated some panels, a few that he was on at some conferences, and they had Bitcoin, I think Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash, and then like obviously all the EVM and Solana stuff. But I wanted them to integrate Dash, and they're like, sure, but you have to build the back end integration. And so we got some devs to do it, and they pushed the PR, and it just never got merged. And then later I hit him up about it, and he's like, oh yeah, well, we're sort of pivoting. And then they basically, from reading between the lines, ran out of money, and they got acquired by the Cardano ecosystem in some way. And now they are sort of merging. So and this is this for many years was my daily driver extension wallet. And now they're merging with SecondFi. And then this happens. So I'm like, oh, so I wanted to see if this was going to affect my money in the extension wallet. I'm like, oh, let me check this real quick. Right. And I'm like, oh no, I'm safe. But so that's the backstory on them. And so now you have Tay, who as people might know, I have a love-hate relationship with Tay Vano. I think she's very.
I try to be nice to her because like she follows me, but she says a lot of stuff that I disagree with, and I know she does that you too. So. Yeah,
the thing is, like, I think she's smart and has good positive contributions to the space.
For sure.
It is very entertaining, but also very aggressive. And when you're not on the right side of that, like when she's, in my opinion, wrong, or just we disagree, it's just a pain. And she already blocked me, and then we were in some group talking about the Roman Storm trial defense thing, trying to like help out there. And then I wanted to share one of her posts, so I just DM'd her and said, hey, can you unblock me so I can share the post? So she did. And now we've had an uneasy truce ever since. So that's where we're at.
Well, I think where she and I violently or vehemently, well, not violently, but vehemently disagree is her position on credible neutrality. Probably the same thing with you too, which not this story, but it's the Thorchain story we're probably going to talk about later.
Yes, that's that.
But yeah, and I get her perspective. I just don't agree with it. But like I get why she thinks that because of what she was exposed to. And maybe she's just young and doesn't know how to exist with diversity of opinion. So I don't know. Like I'm an old man.
Well, as far as I'm aware, she's not that young. Someone thinks they're hot. As far as I know, she has like coming up on adulthood children kind of thing. So,
all right.
So I don't know. Some
people are just different. Then
there's someone who in the Zcash ecosystem will remain unnamed, who gives off somehow similar vibes. And it's more of a, wine mom who gets on X and just after a few too many Chardonnays just starts sounding off on people. That's the vibe. I'm not making accusations of this actual behavior, but it's anyway. Right. So all this to say, Tay posted in reference to that thing. She says they did it. They actually did it. They actually managed to screw up and reuse nonces from ED to 55196. Incredible things happening on Cardano. Innovation even. And then Mark Carpellas, again, Mark Carpellas from Mount Gox. Was that who he was? I have to.
Yep.
He's
Magical Tux.
He said, nope, they didn't reuse nonces. Read more. To which Tay said, to be clear, these guys rolled their own crypto so effing hard that anyone could get your private key from public information. This was not a highly sophisticated, premeditated attack. It's embarrassing. It's worse than 2011 era Bitcoin wallets ever were. And then she corrects, says, one of my 4am tweets mentions nonce reuse. I was speaking casually because I was flabbergasted just how effing stupid this is. Anyway, we rolled our own crypto so that anyone could get public information. But anyway, so what's your take on this whole thing before we barrel on further?
I mean, I've never really understood why ADA is as popular as it is, other than the fact that it's just very old and still around. But it's, like, because it's like their approach to doing things. They're like, it's just kind of like, it seemed like a fun science experiment that has an outsized market cap and user base, right?
Which
I don't
it's
begrudge
funny
anybody.
because you're what I would consider one of the more educated takes on the subject. It's like bell curve theory. It sounds exactly like the knuckle dragger's opinion on Cardano. It's the exact same. It's bell curve theory. It's like whoop, both sides.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then the mid curve people are going to come after me. I'm sure we're going to see the comments file in. But like I really like. Look, I've never hated it. I've just like I see what they're doing. I'm like, okay, yeah. There's like even when it came out, there was like 5 or 6 other projects that were trying to do what they were doing. Just the way they went about their process, their goals. It's just like I know these guys are going to get lapped, and that's exactly what has happened. And for some reason, I guess because of its age or because of the credibility of some of the people involved, it sticks around with a big user base or a big fan base, but it's just not because it isn't a robust ecosystem like Ethereum. Right? There's just not as many eyeballs on stuff, and especially in the depths of a bear market, you're going to have less people holding feet to the fire. Like SecondFi, like part of the problem is they're getting away with running a closed source wallet, so there is no community out there going, hey, you're using a crappy library that has problems with it, and they, in a bear market, I'm sure their fee revenue is down. So there's less. Okay, well, where can we cut the budget? Well, we don't need to audit our nonce generation. I mean, come on, that's basic.
Because we can always clod it.
Yeah, or even if it probably would have fixed it if they clotted it, but they didn't do that.
Yeah, so. It's like the Drake meme, the whole audit, clod it.
I mean, I'm a big fan of intelligent deployment of AI coding tools. We were riffing on before we ran the intro, but like, you've got to intelligently deploy them. You can't just plug it into Lovable and hope things are going to work out.
Mm-hmm. You can't be like, fix my awful wallet, make no mistakes. Like it takes more mistakes. Than that. More prompting than that. But so, yeah, this is. It is pretty interesting where this exploit ended up because a lot of people apparently lost money. I haven't done the calculations. It's always developing.
Oh yeah, I got some stats here. It's crazy. So the official count from SecondFi is it was 374 wallets, but a total of 16 million ADA stolen. The BitQuery on chain says it was 3,072 wallets, with a total of 129.4 million ADA swept, but that could include some of the money that was swept back in a self-rescue attempt. So, and then like the total dollar amount of losses could exceed $20 million.
Yeah, that's brutal. I don't know how brutal that is in context of today, because we have billion-dollar hacks, but like, in context of the ecosystem, it sucks. One thing that I think is interesting, random side note about the self-saving swept thingy, there was a Bitcoin Cash-based algorithmic stablecoin or over-collateralized stablecoin, Mora USD, ran by some Norwegian team, and they discovered some exploit, some fund-draining exploit. And so they immediately exploited it themselves and stole all the money and gave it back to the users before an attacker could exploit it. And now I think they're fixing it all. But it was like that was one of those like horribly stressful weekends like a few months ago for those people, where they're like, oh no.
Oh, I can imagine.
But no one lost money, so that's because they hacked it before anyone else did. But anyway, on the SecondFi thing, this interesting piece here. It says, important guidance for SecondFi users. We understand that many users are considering migrating to new wallets, and that trusted members of the community are suggesting ways to do so. We recognize it comes from a desire to protect your own assets. If you choose to migrate, you do so at your own risk. However, we strongly advise against taking this action at this time, particularly if you're not technical. The safest course is to leave it untouched. So, this is, first of all, for a random user, if there's an exploit in your stuff, you want to do a bank run, right? That's just what you typically, the reflex is. Oh, the thing is, it's not secure. Get the money out so you still have it. Doesn't work here.
Yeah.
Do you have any visibility into why I didn't look into it enough to fully understand?
So, again, I didn't spend enough time to verify this hypothesis, but from my understanding, like I just read the analysis from other people that did more work than me, and not the seed, not generating a new seed that's a problem, because you could just do that in another wallet and it wouldn't be exposed, but the act of moving could reuse a nonce and expose you. So if you're using the wallet to move the funds that has exposure, you could expose yourself when you might not have previously been exposed.
So it's kind of like if you go to unlock, like your house is insecure, the lock is insecure, and if you go to whip out your keys to open the door, now your key can be taken, sort of.
Right.
So you have to just sit there and hope no one breaks into your house. Now that you know it can be broken into, because if you get in there to try to rescue your stuff, you could just exploit it yourself almost. It's kind of
right.
It's kind of that's a rough situation because they're just like stay put. Oof.
Yeah. On the other hand, Hopkins was correct. The chain worked perfectly. It processed the theft just fine. The L1 was undamaged. It was just a wallet, but that's not gonna make a difference when it comes to this is a very dominant wallet that's used for the community, so it's not gonna make a difference for the price and for the PR hit.
Yeah. Now the Cardano background for recently. First of all, when you're talking about science project, which everyone tends to say, I do remember when Cardano was founded. It was a while ago, but for me, it still feels like a new chain to me. But then that's just because I'm an unk, right? I'm kind of old in the space. But, compared to you, maybe not, but like compared to a lot of people. But I remember because Ethereum came out and it was the first big smart contract chain. Everything else after Ethereum, including Solana, has the Ethereum copy vibe, right? Ethereum killer. You're trying to copy paste Ethereum with some parameters and fix it. Even though that might be very unfair for some things like Solana, maybe, it still is like the vibe. And Cardano sort of gave the impression, and I'm just talking marketing stuff and like public opinion, it gave the impression that this was a first principles new smart contract chain. Meaning it's like it was created, it wasn't a copy and paste of Ethereum at all. They did sound academic research to create something that's like, this is like does the kind of stuff that Ethereum does, but obviously better. The thought was better, right? But completely differently. It's like we're not copy and pasting everything. We're doing it right. Ethereum's concept done right was sort of the thing. And if you were the criticisms, of course, are it's very academic, not practical. People like Justin Bonds have been criticizing scalability and throughput and L2 scaling versus the usual stuff, right? And I think that Cardano has been very over capitalized and hyped. It's as in I see Cardano in terms of, or historically I've seen it top 10. I've seen a bunch of money in there. I've seen it, Hoskinson running around like a star, like all this high level stuff. But then as far as usage, like when you go to pay for something, who accepts ADA for payment? Almost no one. Where do you accept, where can you actually connect your thing? Where is the DEX supported? Where is the other stuff? There's you can usually tell based on how often something pops up, how much it's actually being used. Like how many people are like, connect your Binance wallet. It's like, oh, well, Binance must be a big thing. Or like, this is a token on BNB or whatever. It's like, oh, okay, this must be being used a lot. And there's been, smart contract chains tend to get a lot more transaction volume than like an individual transactions than a payment chain because there's just so many more actions. But Cardano's always had very low, especially compared to its market cap, kind of all this. So we've seen a recent crisis where the price has gone down. Like, price always goes down on everything, right? It goes up and it goes down, and it is. But like, there's that at the same time as Charles Hoskinson, the enigmatic founder man, has sort of said, he sort of threatened to rage quit if he didn't get money, and now he's not responded well to public criticisms, and now they created a new. They say, oh, we're not going to do governance talk on X anymore. We're only going to do it on this one Discord. And if Charles and his friends, as he calls the party, which is very funny the way he calls it that, the party insists that if you do not join this censorable Discord, that I'm entering the censorable word, then we will automatically vote against all your proposals. The party is the will of the party. And so all this right when midnight, the new Hoskinson project, that with privacy and stuff, that why it wasn't on Cardano, I don't know, but it's a new project with a new token, is all taking over. It's starting to really come into its own. And all that time, like, it's this perfect recipe for implosion right when the hack happens, right during a bear market. So that's the context of this whole thing.
Right. Yeah. That's and that's a lot of context that I'm not really super privy to. You follow that a lot more closely than I do, but that's that's a lot. I don't know that I have a ton of comment on it, other than to say it occurred to me the perfect kind of metaphor to explain my thoughts on that whole, like, this is a better smart contract platform or whatever approach to their academic development of it. And it's like ADA, Cardano, the whole ecosystem seems like, when you read like a New England Journal of Medicine headline in some sort of magazine or newspaper, and it says, scientists have discovered that men like looking at boobs. Like, we know, right? Like, you're telling me you spent money on a study to or whatever, like some very obvious thing, right? And like, that seems to me what the Cardano project has kind of been, is like, you could spend, a decade and millions of dollars building a chain that has the perfect smart contract platform. But meanwhile, Ethereum and Solana and a million L2s and parallel L1s have existed. And, like you guys at Dash, right, and other places have built great smart contract platforms that are functional and secure and may not be perfect, but they work. And they're getting use. They're getting real institutional and retail use. And meanwhile, the project that spent all of its time trying to come up with the perfect platform incubated a wallet that reuses nonces.
Yeah. That's a fun round trip of this whole thing. On the Dash crypto quorum space yesterday, we're talking about stable coins, which is kind of a boring subject, but it ended up being a very interesting discussion that lasted the whole 2.5 hours or whatever. But part of it, we were talking about crypto is an inherently part of the reason I like this space so much, even though whether I'm a tech nerd, which I am, and whether I'm a freedom maximalist, which I am, if those parts weren't involved, there's still something compelling about this space, because you have two different things. You're building generational infrastructure from scratch that anyone can use anywhere around the world, all that kind of stuff. But then you have to balance that with doing end user products that people use today on top of that. And so stablecoins are one of these. Stablecoins might not be a thing in 20 years, for example. It might not be at all. Right. Who knows? But you build it for now, and the chain has to do the thing, or you just don't make it that far. But if you just make a stablecoin chain, then that works until there's a new thing, and then it's just like an old business that dies out. And so you want to build like a generational dynasty, and I think the intellectual stimulation is trying to build this first principles, well-engineered, decentralized, permissionless thing that can do anything that's a man for all seasons, right? You're trying to build that thing and then you're trying to connect with the needs of today, and you're just constantly ping-ponging those desires back and forth as time marches on. And it just, again, for intellectually at least, it's an incredibly fulfilling space to be for that purpose. And I kind of feel like Cardano sort of went a lot in the first side of the direction, the long-term thinking, and did not connect it to reality today, or even reality tomorrow. We don't know reality tomorrow is my point, but just did not connect it to end user products. And I kind of feel like Solana, well, I need to do way more research into Solana before I make big.
So Solana is absolutely the mastery of pragmatism over academic
Yes.
correctness.
Yeah, so that's like, how do we get it injected into my veins right now, get it more, get it faster, cheaper, just do it. And then if you look
Right.
at how it's structured, that's where I can't say either way if it's smart or not, but I would say,
personally, I have deep technological objections to Solana's solutions, but you can't argue with the pragmatism and the effect that it had on the market. Like, they stole the idea of meme coins from the Ethereum virtual machine for almost an entire cycle, and so much so, like, injected steroids and performance enhancing drugs into the market to the point where, like, it ran the whole narrative into the ground. Like, meme coins may be completely dead next cycle, and it's because Solana said, we did it all, we tried every idea, they're done.
yes, and because of the speed of deployment, then you didn't have like a 5-year life cycle. You had like a 1-year life cycle because everything happened. Kind of like how I feel because of the speed of information execution. I kind of feel like political movements, like a presidential administration, whatever, like gets shrunk in that amount of time. I do think that impeaching and removing a president, this is just random hot take and I haven't thought of it too much, so if I'm wrong, don't come after me, but I think that impeaching and removing a president will become a lot more possible, a lot more practical in the coming decades, just because by the time people catch up, it's time for another 4-year election anyway. I think that people are going to catch up in 2 years now, and now they're going to be like, we want someone new now. And just because stuff is moving faster. So Solana did that with meme coins. They just ran through the whole thing, and it's like a Rick and Morty thing when he's playing the game of life, and then he just like has a whole life, and then he's back right there. It's like that's what Solana did for meme coins. They just lived everything, and it's over.
Yeah, they did the speed run.
Yes. Speaking of Solana, I heard that some of the major, and I don't know if this has changed, but a lot of the major Solana wallets were closed source, the better performing ones. I think, was it Phantom, or it was a couple of those, or Soul Flare. I don't know. There was a couple of those wallets that were closed source, and that's not good. So hope doesn't mean they're going to get wrecked like Second Fi, but it does mean that there's
You can't totally blame this on so one of my favorite wallets from I don't even know how many cycles ago, Koinomi. They're like a 2016 era wallet, and I think they went
first
closed
Dash
source.
wallet, by the way.
Yeah, mine too. In fact, it was my first everything that's not Bitcoin wallet, because I started out on QT, like a lot of people at that time, because there was no other choice. I think I used blockchain.info back when it was called that. And then I used, at least for my daily use wallet, and I tried some hardware wallets. I built my own for a while, but the wallet that I built back when Koinomi was open source used their open source code to run most things. And then they went closed source in like 2019, and I didn't have the bandwidth to keep maintaining that infrastructure. I didn't have a development team. It was I sold hundreds of hardware wallets, not thousands or millions, So there was when I think they were probably the one that started the trend, and their explanation at the time is that if you're running a wallet You're probably subsidized by the in-app multi-chain exchange that are usually run on Changely or Shapeshift at the time. Would probably be Thorchain today. And anybody can just steal your code and switch out the affiliate code for Changely or Shapeshift, and you've lost all of your, your revenue sources, and given them free R&D, which I mean it logically scans, but also you've lost the auditability and the ability to trust the wallet when they go closed source, and you've also lost that community open source support, which is what Cardano is experiencing here. And I use closed source wallets when I have to, but I very much prefer not to. I don't trust them.
Yeah, for me,
not because I myself will be auditing the code, but because I know that there is no other eyeballs on it.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like open source is like consensual, right? So if it's non-consensual, like I kind of feel like we have to draw the line somewhere, and my line is because decentralization is such a spectrum and it's hard to whatever. As long as the network is technically permissionless, meaning there's nothing gating your usage of it. Is one guy controlling 2/3 of the validators? That's a different subject. But as long as structurally you can use it, and structurally, like anyone can show up, buy some coins, stake them, and vote in governance, or anyone can run up a miner, it's open. And then the actual wallets, tools are open source, even if they're highly centralized and I don't look at the source and whatever. I don't care. Those are like the minimums, right? That's what crypto is to me, is those things. Is it a permissionless network in, like, technically, even if not practically, and is it an open source wallet? That's kind of it. Which I just looked up as, again, my fantastical research there. Major Solana wallets that are closed source or not fully open source include Phantom, Soulflare, Exodus, Atomic, and Coinbase. And roughly, closed source Solana wallets hold the vast majority of the market, like 90 to 95% combined.
Are there any open source wallets at that point? Like, that's all the wallets that I know for that ecosystem.
With open source ones, primarily Backpack, which I've never heard of, account for a small minority, probably under 5 to 10%. So, in my opinion, that's a problem. It's not undesirable. It's a problem, Yeah. And it's also interesting how a lot of people complain about dropped Solana transactions. Obviously, if you look at failed transactions on the network, you see a lot, but there's a lot of arguments that those are like flash loans and stuff like that, where people are intentionally dropping their own transactions for another one. But I've heard a lot of firsthand accounts of saying we have failed transactions all the time. And then I also heard people saying, the wallet's misconfigured, you got to use the right wallets. But the problem is, if you use the right wallets that are closed source, who knows how they're achieving that? Is there a select group of validators that they're only pinging that are geographically proximitous, or is there like a select validator set that they can ping to do maximum performance? I don't know. What stuff is making them reliable while some other ones might not be? And again, this is a subject I need to do a deep dive into, although maybe I can just, like a lot of cases, just wait it out, and if Solana crashes to zero, I just don't have to do research into it. I can research the next thing, but that's something that I have some concerns about.
Yeah, we could probably fill a day with all the concerns I have about Solana from an architectural perspective. It starts with their validator set, and it continues on into how their smart contracts convention. I wouldn't call them protocol level errors. I would call them convention level errors that have turned into protocols, because the way they achieve the speed and finality is not in using the same methodology as almost literally any other blockchain, right? It's not done at the chain level. It's done at how the dominant smart there's nothing that prevents you from launching a new token protocol on Solana that works in the same way that Ethereum does, but the token standard that has been anointed is this centralized smart contract on Solana that is the cheapest way to deploy a token that is effectively centrally controlled, right? and not controlled in like a nefarious way, but it is. So if you've tried to do DAO-like things on Solana, you've run into the problem that this architecture creates. So it's very cheap to transfer and very cheap to deploy what is considered to be on their token standard. But if you want to do an airdrop of 1 million tokens, or you want to do anything that with an existing token that isn't just buying and selling it, you can very easily, with a couple of $100, halt the network, or previously halt, like not halt the network, but halt or have your deployment fail, because everything has to go through that single smart contract. And the same thing with NFTs on their network as well. Everything has to go through the same NFT contract, and there's only so much room. So if you are trying to do an airdrop, you can block other people from deploying their tokens, or vice versa. People deploying their tokens can block you from doing their airdrop.
Just because it gets congested because everyone's using the same contract?
Because you're trying to do too much in a single transaction, and there's only so much block bandwidth that's available at any given moment. Mm-hmm. Granted, the block resolution times are very small, and so you can, if you plan it out, you can spread it out across many blocks. But that's a challenge. That's a development challenge that you don't have to even think about on other networks.
Yeah, so it almost seems like in some ways Solana was designed, I wouldn't say well.
The purpose of a system is what it does. It was designed to do the thing that it's known for, which is shitcoins.
Well, yeah, maybe it was designed with good enough foundational principles, and then just all the hack it together to make it work as fast and efficient as you can. Stuff went on. So maybe it's the case where if you needed to completely redo stuff, you'd keep the chain and just redeploy different token contracts, redo different things, open source wallets, do all this. You can kind of renew the chain without dumping the chain, I guess. So I guess that's the silver lining on that beam coin, as it were. But yeah, speaking of DAOs, the ENS DAO thing. So
yeah.
Let me see. I did interview, Nick, friend of the show. He's been on the show many years ago, but that was only briefly. Let me just put this out. So this Lefteris Karapetsas person said, DAOs are so dead, I see nobody noticed or discussed this proposal that ENS DAO essentially dissolves itself and transfers the control of the entire treasury, almost $500 million in ENS and stables, to the ENS Foundation. And then this post here by Sweep, or 0x Sweep, the founder of ENS is about to vote himself control over $500 million treasury. ENS is a governance emergency and is voting to move the DAO treasury to the foundation. The foundation is controlled by ENS Labs, blah, 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 Nick Johnson's company. The problem is Nick holds 3.3 million of voting power, all this stuff. And then there's this big wall of text from Catherine Wu saying there's been a lot of misinformation, blah, blah, blah. And then this same lefterist quoted that. So there's been a lot of misinformation. So let me proceed to write a big wall of text and disallow comments. And so I think he's a different party of this whole dispute. But how would you TLDR this whole thing?
So many such cases, sadly.
Yeah.
I have experienced this exact style of governance attack firsthand twice. And this is how I would characterize this as a governance attack. I experienced it at Free Ross DAO, and I don't want to alienate some friends, but there was a very big DAO that I was I was an employee of, that if I'd just say that much, and people who know me well will know which one I'm talking about. I'm not going to drag their name through the mud because there's still people I respect over there. But the thing that is happening with the thing that's happening with ENS happened with that particular DAO as well, and they're have a treasury that controls at least hundreds of millions. I'm not sure if it's quite billions. So, like a not insignificant player in the DeFi space, and this is a structural problem that exists with how democratically engineered DAOs are, because DAOs is a very broad term, as you and I have discussed. We've had like a whole podcast devoted to this concept, and I'm very pro DAO. I know you're very pro DAO. I'm not. Don't anybody take this as me saying DAOs are bad or DAOs are even dead, but I'm saying that the style of DAO that ENS is, the style of DAO that I was employed by, and the style of DAO that Free Rots DAO was, are particularly susceptible to this type of governance attack from people who would call themselves founders or high level movers and shakers. And I understand, like, it should be thought of as an emergent property of this style of DAO, right? Mm-hmm. This will happen given a long enough timeline. Two reasons why. One is, and I'm not just talking about the governance attack, but the response to it and the discussion and the everything that we're seeing play out with ENS. It's a definite pattern that happens with DAOs, right? So you've been involved with DAOs long enough to feel the frustration of when you're actually working and contributing to things, how slow things move in a DAO, right? How sometimes the act of dealing with a community can be a drag on what you know to be necessary execution, right?
Yes.
And that in itself is a risk of the organizational type. I guarantee you, this was not the motive of the takeover attack on Free Ross DAO, but it was on the second one. I guarantee you, if you got Nick behind closed doors and you said, why is this happening? And probably is even, it's not even probably, it is actually kind of hinted at in his governance proposal itself. Like, this is the motive for him wanting to transfer control to a labs, is so that he can move faster without having to take everything that he deems as a necessary step to a full-on governance vote, right? If he has less accountability to a community, he can do things without having to worry about what 1 million people are going to say, right? Unfortunately, there's a lot of legal problems with this, right? Because this is basically the legal problems I'm about to describe is the whole reason, like, how DAOs as a concept kind of came to be, right? Yeah. Because they came out of the ICO era, right? Where ICOs, where we are going to deploy a token, we're going to call it a utility token because we don't want the SEC on our ass, but really it is a way for you to have on-chain ownership in this concept, but we're going to structure it under a company probably, right? And then, Clayton and then later Gensler's SEC said, no, good try, but no, we're not allowing that. It's a security. And from a legal argument perspective, probably correct in most cases. Like, it should be considered a security because with the ICO structure, you have to trust a centralized authority to follow the wishes of the token holder, right? Trust was a central piece of the ICO model. DAOs are fundamentally a response to that, where, well, okay, so we're going to move governance on chain and we're going to allow direct control. So it's fundamentally a different instrument than what the SEC and other legal governing bodies would consider a security, right? And the upside of that is that, yes, you have created a legally distinct instrument. The downside of that is you are effectively, and this is shorthand for the sake of brevity, you've effectively created a organization that is subject to the similar performance issues that a nonprofit might have, or like a hobbyist organization might have. Like, I don't know if you've ever been like a member of like a Rotary club or a gardening club or like a high school like club thing. I mean, you've been a member of the Libertarian Party. I don't even have to say anything else. Like, things get bogged down in parliamentary procedure.
I'm not sure if I've ever been a member. I think I've just voted for LP candidates a lot.
Oh, well, so have you ever been to like the delegation, the conventions though?
Yes, I've been to that. I've been to a bunch of things starting when I was like 14 even. I did like a college credit course. It was a mock simulation of redrawing a US Constitution in a, for example, in a future situation. I've done a lot of these sort of deliberation type things. I've been on local boards, local like political party things, and local clubhouses on the board there. I've had, yeah, I've been around. Unfortunately, I know how it works. It's annoying.
For me, when like the part of the Libertarian Party that exposed my eyes that like all humans are the same at a fundamental level when it comes to making group decisions. It doesn't matter what their political stripe is when I sat in on the Texas Libertarian Party convention, and I don't remember what year this was. It was more than 20 years ago at this point, or maybe right around 20 years. And it was just, there was not, they were deciding on what the party platform planks ought to be. And none of it was driven by ideology. All of it was driven by lobbying within the room and currying favor with people who were considered to be power brokers within the party. Like this group of people over here were Texas conservatives that wanted, an anti-abortion plank in the party, even though at the time, probably most of the delegation was pro-choice or didn't want any abortion plank in the party at all, because why should we be talking about regulating a thing if we're the party of no regulations? Like that was the discussion in the room, but because there was a small group of people that wielded a lot of power when it came to money, they started, basically bought their way into having a plank, right? And that's you can't get away from that. You can't get away from that sort of parliamentary jockeying for power behavior in any organization, in a political party, in a DAO, in a Rotary Club. In fact, the less money that's at stake, the more jockeying for power exists, because that's all you've got is power.
So ironic, right? It's just like, and
Yeah.
I've noticed that to be a thing a lot, where people will fight a lot over those little positions, and I think that the struggle over, in this case, the Libertarian Party, is commensurate to how ineffective it is as a political party. The more ineffective it is, the more strife there is over trying to control part of it, because controlling part is the only thing it offers. There's no controlling it so that it can achieve these things. And so I kind of feel like you get a lot of like the dying DAOs tend to run into that kind of thing.
And I wouldn't even characterize ENS as a dying DAO. It's like the only thing that's dying about it is the ecosystem that's a part of. We're kind of in a bear market, and they're feature complete for the most part, right? So what's left to fight over but control over this small group of people that care about a mostly feature complete system and the treasury involved, right? So it's that's the situation. I mean, that's like the headline of what's going on here, I think. I respect Lefteris. I think he's probably mostly correct in this. I don't think that Nick is probably a bad person. I think he's a frustrated founder, and this is the best solution that he sees, and he's not understanding how fundamentally bad it is to the cypherpunk values of the rest of the group of which he exists. Or maybe he just doesn't care because he doesn't have those values. I don't know.
Or maybe because it's maybe because of the Solanification of things, of let's do it rather than how did we do it kind of thing. I think it's
Right.
It's kind of also interesting how, like, because governance is a very interesting topic. I mean, I find it infinitely fascinating, and I have found that, first of all, there's a lot of fighting over money. If there is a pot of money, there's fighting over the pot of money. And
Yep. That was the death of Free Rothschild, too.
Yep. And I kind of, this is one of those things where, like, the bulk of my DAO experience has been sort of in the Dash world, and some of the problems are slightly different, and the money pot has never been that much of a problem. There have been people jockeying over money, but there's no pot of money. It comes out every month, and it's like a salary. It's like jockeying over a job that you can be fired from the next month. It's like, that's not as attractive to fight over. Well, it's not like there's just pot of money you can get. It's like, well, you can. So more recently, and I mean, it's kind of internal politics anyway, but there's a significant whale in the Dash ecosystem who is from Russia and is not a fan of mine because he kind of wants to do a lot of the stuff I'm doing, and I'm kind of in the way of, like, he would, if I'm not there, he can put in a proposal that does similar things but his own way, which in my opinion would never pass, but it's like playing a long game. And anytime there's like a slow voting cycle, he comes out and tries to take me out. I have to pull some favors to stay in. It's just the annoying stuff that has to happen. But even then, his interests, or some person like him, the most they can do is try to like remove people that they think are maybe threatening to their prospects. And then they still have to go and like find a way to ask for money. And then they have to keep maintaining approval month after month to keep the money coming in. And you can do that, but it's just harder to do. It's not like there's a pot of money and now I just administer it, kind of thing. And funny enough, this individual's desires, again, all this is like public. No one knows this because no one clicks on the governance website for Dash except for the couple people who vote or whatever. But like, it's all public info. But like, one of his big ideas is to get a lot of Dash to run master nodes that then fund through the staking rewards this thing in perpetuity. So he's trying to create a money pot situation where now he presides over a chunk of money and stuff, where that doesn't
reduce accountability.
Yeah, where that doesn't work. Well, again, I would think maybe, but I'm not going to make accusations. Even this person doesn't like me, and I should. But the point is, it's still like the natural...
I would say that he might have a great ulterior motive, but like, just I have no skin in the game, and just as an independent observer of how DAOs operate, it is absolutely to reduce accountability, and that's not necessarily a negative thing. It sounds negative, right? But that's every DAO has to come up with ways to reduce accountability if they're going to accomplish something, right? Because like I can't function throughout the day in terms of like minute coding decisions, or if I got to write a blog. If I'm the social media manager for a DAO, I can't put every tweet to a DAO vote. I've got to reduce accountability to the point where they trust me for at least a week, for a month, or a year to decide what goes out on the Twitter account.
Well, and I have to say, I have to steel man that position as well. I agree with that in at least broad picture. I wouldn't say accountability inherently sounds like it's a negative, so I'm going to phrase it as reduced DAO exposure, because the DAO is a pain to deal with, or reduced governance exposure. Like my least favorite time of the quarter is getting my quarterly proposal together. I don't like paperwork. I don't like writing stuff out. I don't like having to deal with votes. I just want to do my job and do it well, and that's it. And I have also actively been looking for outside revenue sources. So, for example, I got a nonprofit donation for about, what was it, 200K or so for some side development work for the Dash ecosystem. I didn't have to ask anyone any governance for that. I just raised the money. And so now it's like, I don't have to deal with, I can pay for security audits. I can do this. I can do all this fun stuff that I don't have to like deal with votes, and I'm stewarding it. I'm not taking any money for myself. Right. And so I'm also like running sponsorships for the crypto quorums. Of course, you see in some other things to get exogenous sources of revenue. So then we don't have to just deal with the DAO, because also the DAO, even ones that pay out monthly, like the Dash DAO, they do still prioritize people who are able to win governance votes rather than necessarily effective people. Sometimes there's overlap. I would like to say I'm a case of some overlap, but not purely. Like, there's a difference between results and winning, capitalism
politics
versus
politics, regardless of the context. If it's government politics or DAO governance politics. You know, it's you don't always who wins is not always the most qualified, but sometimes we get lucky.
Yeah, sometimes we get lucky. And I have to say, there is a sort of a situation with when DAOs shrink, right? When people go away, when there's there's not a lot going on. The DAO characters tend to be more binary, where now you got the hardworking believers who it's kind of like the investor mindset of like the startup mindset of I'm going to do something, I'm going to grind now for something small because I think it can be big in the future. You have those people, and then you have the grifter people that can't do anything real, but they're here because it's so small that who else is going to show up? And they're kind of like the win by default people. And so the success of a small DAO depends on who wins out. But head to head, those are way different caliber people. So the grifter leeches tend to just fall out because, they're the visionaries, I guess, do something different. But yeah, there's a...
Yeah. But like, yeah, the parallels to this are, I mean, I wish I could. It's an interesting story in so much as that all DAO stories are interesting, but like what's going on with ENS is so close to what's happened in my history. The poly market whale thing that you were talking about recently, same. It's very much the same story there too. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's right, effectively like it. At the end of the day, Nick, it's a governance attack only because he was a silent whale that decided he got tired of dicking around with a community that he really was never accountable to if he decided to throw his weight around.
Yeah. There's something going on, I guess, with the Hive blockchain as well, where there's a couple of whales who, if they want to, can just change everything. And it's funny because in my case, in the Dash DAO, what do they call him? Bugbear or whatever they call the term is. The person who doesn't like me is probably one of the largest single whales in the network. And if he gets defeated, like there's no one who's above the law, as it were, which is a good situation to be in. But I would argue if you start out as the decide everything whale, if you are still that way after a few years, it's failed as a DAO and you got to like do something about it or get rid of it, right? Like the fact that he is, I have no knowledge of the history of the ENS DAO, but I'm just assuming that the idea was eventually to distribute power, and the fact that the founder guy has enough to where he can just say, you know what, we're canceling the DAO, sort of. If he not, well, that's obviously an oversimplification, but if he can do that, that means the DAO never got off the ground, in my opinion.
I mean, that's. I mean, I would say that's what Lefteris would argue, is that there was never a DAO because it never got off the ground, or it did get off the ground, and he's like, oh, I don't like the direction it is, so I'm taking my toys and going home. Because if you take from an economic perspective, or with DAOs, you have a very simple economic indicator that tells you what the public's confidence in the DAO is. When the token itself, I mean, this is different for Dash because Dash is not a derivative DAO. It's a core governance DAO. But like with ENS, their treasury does not primarily consist of its own instrument. So the ENS token trades mostly at this point at parity with the underlying asset, which is Ethereum. DAOs Free Ross DAO towards the end traded mostly at parity. You knew the NFT market was over when we were no longer the trading value of the underlying asset was only reflective of the token wallet or the ERC20 wallets that we held control over, and the $6 million NFT asset that we had was completely discounted by the market. That should have been a sign that NFTs were done.
Something MNAV.
Yeah. So ENS is in this situation where ENS is trading at parity with Ethereum, as a virtue of the fact that the underlying asset that pins ENS is the Ethereum treasury. And if you're assigning that entire treasury over to a foundation, ENS itself becomes valueless.
Yeah, because now it can't control any of the money because there is no money. And
Correct.
It does nothing. Sort of.
Right. So this is with if you make no bones about it, this governance proposal effectively winds down the ENS DAO.
Yeah, and that's something where I don't know what I would think about that, if that's a good thing or bad thing. In the terms of, if you think a DAO is good, then a DAO should persist, and a DAO is better than not a DAO. In that case, it's a bad thing. In the case of, if there are material problems to ENS, as it were, and the DAO has not become a true DAO because it could be wound down by a single actor-ish, then maybe it's one of those like mercy killing kind of things where it's like, all right, it's time to like, the DAO experiment failed. We're going to move on and survive despite the DAO failing. And maybe they start again with another DAO at some point. But right now it's like,
I mean, I'm not involved in ENS governance, but I am an observer. I was a bag holder up until probably a year ago. And so I would say...
He sniffed it on the horizon.
Yeah. So like I followed it. I just didn't get involved. I had other things going on in my life, unfortunately, that kept me from becoming an ENS maxi or anything like that. But probably a good decision on my part, given all this. But the issue I felt is not that there is no problem with ENS. They like every other namespace project, and I'm not singling anybody out, but I will name some names. ENS, Unstoppable Domains, going all the way back to Namecoin, have left one big unsolved problem on the table and not done anything about it, and that is to do something democratic and cypherpunk about actual DNS, actual namespace. I have Fadi Jahadi on tape. We could roll the tape if I thought to bring it to the show. I was interviewing him at MIT. It's got to be 17 years ago now. He was the president of ICANN back then, and which is an international nonprofit coalition that manages domain names for the internet. And he is on my camera saying the way that ICANN governs the internet and IANA governs the internet is unsustainable. And he goes on to like spend 5 minutes talking about why it's unsustainable. But the bottom line was that it was a United States centralized, dominated solution. And then off camera, I might have been partially on camera, but off camera, we got to ask him, hey, what do you think about Bitcoin? Which was a brand new concept back then, like 2013, right? 2014, somewhere in this zone. And he's like, yeah, I mean, I love it. I don't know that it's capable of, replacing ICANN, but we're watching it, right? And then, then you saw Aaron Swartz very shortly after, or shortly before, perhaps, I can't remember the exact sequencing, work on Namecoin, and literally gave us a proof of concept of how we can decentralize the governance of all internet namespace and all internet number space. Like this
Conspiracy
exists.
says that's why they bumped him off.
For decade plus, for almost 15 years, this has existed. And ENS has the treasury to pull this off, to actually lobby inside of ICANN through legitimate means. Unstoppable Domains had the VC money to make this happen. I, just prior to getting raided by the FBI, interviewed for the director of marketing position at Unstoppable Domains, and I laid out like a 15-point plan for making this happen, for them becoming, because I saw ENS leaving it on the table, because I saw Namecoin leaving it on the table. I said, you guys have the opportunity to become the domain name arbitration for the entire internet if you follow this plan. Here's the CEO or the president of ICANN telling you in this interview that what I'm saying is correct. And they went with somebody else. They didn't
Well,
pick me for that. So like
now,
I
do you
don't
think it's
understand.
still on the table? Maybe not for Unstoppable or ENS, but do you think that it's still up for the taking, so to speak? That there is a plan you could
Oh
do?
yeah, absolutely. I've got a white paper I've been nursing on my hard drive for probably like 3 or 4 years now, that I think lays it out. But I'm not a particularly investable person anymore, so I don't see it ever happening with me at the helm. But I would happily hand this document over a blueprint to somebody with more clout than me and say, fix the internet, please, for the love of God, because I have to live on it, just like you. You know.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I mean, I'll think. There's so many. The problem is, I wish I had a legion of flying monkeys to just do my bidding with all my ideas because I just end up doing it all myself and then being overstretched. Unfortunately, that's what happens. But maybe I'll send some messages after the thing to see if there's any follow up on that because if it's on the table, like I think someone should do it, and if it gets done, that's great. So, but in the
Yeah.
meantime, political DAOs will be political DAOs, and stuff will happen, and the namespace is it's interesting. It's moving on. But let's talk about this Sailor thing because I know you wanted to say something about that. I don't mind dumping on him, and let me just throw up a couple of these posts about when he's talking with Adam Bank, as I call him, about like, we take all the volatility out. You risk nothing, and it goes up. You just sit back while you make all this money. And someone said they made a video for the prosecution, and then this funny post, someone just had a picture of the guy, said, just hired a new financial advisor. I know he's going to manage my money responsibly. And then this post up, more than 50% of the Bitcoin network, meaning I would say holders of the coin, is now underwater. Historically, this has marked major bottoms for Bitcoin. So as I've gone ad nauseum over this whole Sailor thing, strategy has a bunch of obligations and not many ways out, and this stuff, their Bitcoin is underwater. Their Bitcoin, I mean, they have an unrealized loss. They have their average purchase power is higher than the average short-term holder right now by a decent margin. So like basically they've managed to buy much more top than bottom in that. Their financial products are not doing well. Anyone who bought them is not doing well. It looks like it's going down. I don't know. There's just a lot of bad stuff. And more importantly, Bitcoin sort of, and this is just, again, the big picture rant, kind of like with Cardano earlier, Bitcoin sort of shrugged off layer 1 scaling in 2017 in favor of a layer 2 scaling roadmap of like, this is the better way of doing things. But slowly that ended up being the do nothing roadmap of like, what does Bitcoin do well? And it just fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer things. And now with the Bit 110 people, who I sympathize a lot with in terms of their sort of governance and centralization concerns, all that stuff. But as far as their technical thing, I don't sympathize with it. Are seeking to split the coin, to remove spam, whatever that means. Good old Paul Stortz, friend of the show, wants to start his own eCash SV, as I call it, Stortz Vision, because there's another eCash for Amari's Vision. There's a bunch of chaos going on in Bitcoin. But more importantly, the one thing that everyone will agree on that Bitcoin has been is store of value or number go up, whatever you want to call it, is an investment where you put money in and you have more money after that, kind of. And this cycle has been pumped by strategic reserve stuff and mostly Sailor and strategy, just buying digital asset treasuries, but specifically this one individual in particular pumping it to the sky. Now the pump is not happening anymore. The dump is happening. And it seems like who knows, it seems almost undeniable that over the next few years, probably during the bear market still, that strategy will be forced to sell a certain amount of Bitcoin, which won't be good. And the prices, we'll see what happens in the future, but the store of value narrative seems to be sort of breaking down a little bit, and across a lot of other cryptos as well. So that's the stage. Give me some of your thoughts.
It's hard to know where to start. Um, I'm not mad. I'm disappointed, Sailor. That's really where I start. I think because I mean we talked a little bit off the air or right before you rolled the intro about this, and I don't hate the number go up thing. I don't. I have an uncomfortable truce with it. I think, but I don't hate it. Right? Because financial freedom means a lot of things. But if you say financial freedom to a normie who is not listening to this show, they think I don't have to worry about money. I can just live. And that's what that means to a lot of people.
It means exactly the same thing for me, but what feeds into that conclusion is wildly different. Like, not being censored, owning your own money for me is I don't have to worry about money. But anyway, go on.
Right, but that's the educational path that you got to that, right? You didn't start there, and all of us started somewhere else and ended up with. I mean, I wouldn't say all of us clearly because here we are, but like I would say anybody that has sat within the sound of our voices for long enough have finally probably got there to that definition of what not have to worry about money means, and. But that's not where most people start. Like when I was locked up with like whatever it was, 700 other dudes, I'm coming in the door and I'm Dr. Bitcoin. Now I get exposed to a completely different culture than what I live within. Obviously, I'm in a federal prison, and so I didn't know what to expect as I'm trying to explain Bitcoin to everybody, but what I came to expect was the first question from out of everybody's mouth: how do I get rich off of Bitcoin? How do I get rich off of crypto? And then like a whole bunch of like, hey, I bought this like stupid shit coin, with like you've never heard of right before I got locked up 10 years ago. Do you think it's worth anything? That's an uncomfortable conversation. But the starting point, the bait to the hook for cryptocurrency, for Bitcoin, for any of this is number go up. Now, what makes me disappointed in Sailor and the Sailorites and all the store of value dickheads that I've come to, kind of internally regard them as from this cycle and the one before, is that they removed the hook. It just became the bait. And that doesn't mean what I think. I don't regard what Sailor is doing as Ponzi and the strictest definition of the word, because that's a word with a specific meaning. But it is Ponzi-nomics.
Pyramid.
It's Ponzi-nomics and how we call things in the crypto world, right? It's a number go up and there is no there. And that's what they have reduced an absolutely incredible technology down to. Like Bitcoin, I don't care. I don't care who you are. I will fight anybody that disagrees with the statement. Bitcoin, Satoshi, the original vision is an incredible concept. It's never before seen. Even if you're not a maxi, even if you're anti-Bitcoin in the current environment, you cannot deny that Bitcoin is what got us here, right? Bitcoin is what led to the thing you might like more.
Since 2009, plus 17 years, we have a several $trillion industry, which is made out of something not very investable at all, something very counter commercial, maybe counter cultural, counter whatever, counter stuff. And the fact that the president of the United States, arguably the most powerful one we've had in a long time, depending on what you want to say, was begging for support from people who like this shiny digital thing. So yes, the answer is it's by this evidence, either there's a massive, crazy delusion that just came out of nowhere to just do this whole 17-year asset class thing, or maybe there's some value behind it. Maybe it did start something cool.
Right, but like so. That I say all that is kind of like a level set of to like where I'm coming from. Freaking one of the monikers I go by on the internet is freaking Dr. Bitcoin. So I'm obviously not anti-Bitcoin at my core, but I am very disappointed with what we have allowed Bitcoin to become. And I will say it's not all Sailor's fault either. He is just he's not the Terra Luna of this cycle, but he's contributing to the Goxing of this cycle, which is an unforeseen to him, but not to the rest of us, consequence of actions. And it's a 1-2 punch from him and the federal government. And I kind of hesitate to go down this road because it seems like I do this every time I'm on your show. But like the death of OTC created a serious problem in the ecosystem that allowed Saylor to propagate this narrative, right? So for most of my time in Bitcoin, you could go onto one of many websites or communities on the internet and find some bot, not a machine, somebody in your neighborhood that would give you some Bitcoin for an object or some currency, right? And it was true peer-to-peer activity. And
yes, well, again, going back to the white paper, peer-to-peer electronic cash system. You took away electronic cash, it became a peer-to-peer stuff, and then eventually peer-to-peer goes away, and it just becomes a system.
A digital
Which
asset,
is what is
right?
it now?
Which is not the vision. It's not the vision of this technology at all. And so whenever we got sucker punched or we allowed, because we were trying to widen the gyre of adoption, the federal government to do what it did to us in our ecosystem, it opened the door for people like Saylor to say, well, it's really not about a means of transaction. It's about storing value. And if it's not a means of transaction, if it's not a method of exchange, the value, the ability for it to be a store of value goes away. Capital in flight is what keeps the gravity on chain. The means of exchange era kept gravity pointed at Bitcoin. The store of value era points it at stable coins, at regulated, digital asset, classes. On-chain commerce is booming.
Didn't
it just
Tether
doesn't give it to Bitcoin.
Didn't Tether flip in Ethereum at least briefly today?
Did it? Oh, I didn't see that, but that sucks. That really sucks.
If you look at, let me just look at CoinMarketCap right now. I don't think it is currently, but you can see at least market cap of Ethereum, 189.2 billion. Market cap of Tether, 186.05 billion. So unless something happens with Tether, like bad to Tether in the next year, I would say it's certain that it'll be number two again relatively soon. And if you look at BNB, whatever you think about them, right? 76 billion. The next USDC 73. So stable coins are moving up to where it's like Bitcoin and then stable coins. That's kind of where the market is shaken out right now, which kind of is not very nice for the soul, is it?
No, it's architecture death, and it's going to lead to price death. And that's bad for Saylor, but it's bad for the ecosystem too, because where does that leave the rest of us, right? We need Bitcoin to not die. I'm not saying this as somebody who has staked his life on Bitcoin. I have. But I'm saying this as, if you go out, and Ross Ulbricht said the same thing. Like, if you go outside of our group, when people use the word Bitcoin and crypto interchangeably, if Saylor effectively kills Bitcoin from its narrative of being the figurehead of crypto, we're all in for some level of fucked, because it will halt adoption, and it will cause people to flee to the edges to less cypherpunk technologies. And we don't need that. We don't want that. I don't want Tether being the dominant crypto in cryptocurrency, but that's what will happen.
That's a sad thing.
I mean, I say that, I know, to an audience that is kind of, when we're talking amongst ourselves, is kind of anti-Bitcoin. But I think we're not antithetical to what Bitcoin used to mean. And that's where we need to plant our flag in the ground. And we need to get real loud about defending our big brother from what is really institutional attack. Look, institutions are ecosystem players just like every other type of player. I'm an anarchist. Anybody should be able to use a permissionless system, including institutions. But that doesn't mean they get to control our narrative.
Yeah. Now, the thing where this gets, there's so many theories on what should succeed, what doesn't. Does you need to push this one to succeed? Can it? Just like there's people that think that you need to pass very pro crypto legislation for the industry to thrive, and there's other people that think that crypto will thrive in its true cypherpunk way in a hostile environment, that we need a more hostile environment to keep our roots. There's so much debate back and forth on all those sides. I would say, for what all I know is, advance the tech, get users. Build good tech, get users. The thing about Bitcoin that is, this is one of those, like, I don't know things, right? Where I might have an opinion, but I'm not confident in it. I don't know. Where I kind of feel like post set 2017, and a lot of this is because I was very personally on the other side I got rid of most of my Bitcoin at the end of 2016 when it just didn't work for money anymore. And I've kind of been on the side of Bitcoin is a honeypot, kind of a honeypot of all these good things. Now, to a certain extent, I do realize that you did need Bitcoin to grow and become the standard bearer, because you needed growth in the ecosystem. You needed the biggest asset to do that. You needed something going on. That I've kind of realized that later, but at the same time, so much adoption, so many people have been promoting and saying Bitcoin is freedom, use Bitcoin, all this kind of stuff. And they've been scamming people by getting people into a system that cannot withstand more than a couple 100,000 users globally, and ends up becoming what it is today, the institutional thing, the thing where people put all their money into Bitcoin or the strategy affinity scam, and then they both go down together, and now you have a bunch of people losing money, and it destroys the credibility of the whole space. I kind of feel like, just like the technical innovation, like back in 2013, 14, whatever, you had people being like, let's add privacy, let's add governance, let's add other privacy, let's add programmability, and just getting stonewalled. And they started the entire alt space, whether it's Dash and Zcash for the privacy angle, whether it's Decred for the governance angle, whether it's Ethereum, obviously, for the build stuff on it angle. They left because that was an innovation sink. But then you have like the entire L2 movement, like the Lightning world and all the Bitcoin VM things and all the other stuff is pouring money and talent down the drain. Now you get all the CTV OpCat people, all the whatever Taproot wizards, the all that stuff trying to do things in Bitcoin and just getting rebuffed, and nothing is stuck other than the institutional store value kind of thing. It's so, I kind of feel like it's like bailing out, it's like pouring water out of the Titanic at this point. Like, I don't think, let me be very careful in how I say this, because there's a lot of ways that this could go. I don't think Bitcoin, without a foundational change that reverts the capture of its governance structure, is salvageable. So I think that Bitcoin,
I would definitely agree. Yes. But that's also my point, is we have to, we in the, either, like, I don't consider myself in the alt space. I consider myself a kind of a traveler between, both communities. And I think, so those that you consider yourself alt first, and those that you consider a traveler, need to pay more attention to the Bitcoin ecosystem, because it matters more than we want to admit to our life. Or we need to accept that our space might go through a decade plus long dark winter of discontent, because as goes Bitcoin, so goes our entire ecosystem. AI using crypto is not going to save us, right? It's not. It would be nice if it did. I'm not saying that AI doesn't use. I think I just was on Red's podcast 2 weeks ago saying this is a match made in heaven, and I believe that. I think it is, but also, like, AI people aren't crypto people, and if they see our biggest whale die, they're going to call the entire crypto thing a failed experiment. Why would I want to tie my fortunes in AI, the biggest thing on planet Earth, to a multi-decade failed experiment? you know? So I think that it's important for us to care more than we do about the fate of Bitcoin. I think that's hard because Bitcoiners don't make it easy to love them.
Yeah. I would say if I think number go up has been a problem for Bitcoin in a lot of ways, as I'm sure you do too. The one biggest way is the complacency that perma-bullness gives you, where just like we see everyone at each other's throats during a bear market, Bitcoin's not been at each other's throats since the block size war, right? And since the initial capture. And so from 2017 to 2026, or the halfway point of 2026, right? There's been no self-reflection, no meaningful self-reflection at all. It's been, no, you're all shit coiners. We're doing great. Look at the numbers, you know. Look out, like Tim Dillon, the comedian, likes to say about, you know, boomers are never wrong because anytime you say they're wrong, they said, I can't be wrong because look at my house. Look how big my house is. It's like the same sort of vibe. And now we're seeing people at each other's throats. And I could not be more thrilled for both a, you know, sort of a cathartic, snarky kind of way of me as the Chihuahua nipping at Sailor's heels for 5 damn years straight. Now I get my day, and there's like the Peter Schiff's victory lap, like that kind of vibe. But also because I know if there is a chance of saving Bitcoin, this is it. This is it. People need to fight. People need to be unhappy.
Right.
They need to.
We need to inject some of that energy actually back in their ecosystem. And I think that's the point I'm trying to make. I think nothing causes self-reflection more than failure. I know because I've failed plenty of times in my life. And if we're at a moment where the Bitcoin community might be open to reflection, it's probably going to be now. And it's you know, this is the time to play fair, I think, in terms of discourse, inter-community, right? Hey, look, maybe, you know, this, when you're finally ready to talk, I'm ready to talk, not just poke fun at your demise, not be saying Freud about it, you know?
Yeah. I think part of it is just being part of the discussion in an honest, earnest way. And that is something that I have been, while I've been sniping it. The thing about the Sailor stuff is like, people should have killed that a long time ago. Way too many people got affinity scammed by him who should have known better. Way too many big leaders are there. You see again Adam Back, he might be Satoshi, now that kind of guy sitting on stage as he's scamming the crap out of people. I'm a cypherpunk who has a Cantor Fitzgerald financial product. That's why I call him Adam Bank. And this is the thing, is like the BIP 110 movement. I don't know if you'd say it needs to be embraced, but that is the fight in Bitcoin. There has been no fight in BTC, at least, up until that point, where now people are saying, oh, they killed their hero of Adam Back, where they're like, he's the Epstein guy now. We don't like that. And then they're like, oh, all these other people, they're doing nothing about it. And so now the pleb, like, revolution, even though I don't think that their technical ideas have any merit whatsoever, at least it's like a self-examination of we're going to nothing if we don't fix something. So I think that that's the best chance. Now, one thing you can never do, in my opinion, that I feel like too many people do, is you should never let agenda get in the way of honesty. Like, you do want to fulfill your own agendas for sure, but like, I encourage the BIP 110ers, but I'm not encouraging them saying that they're right, that I like their ideas. I'm not pretending that, because then I'd be lying, and you don't get anywhere by lying. And I don't want to like give credence to their bad ideas, which could tank Bitcoin even further. But I do think that we do need a revolution in Bitcoin. So here's the way I think things play out, right? Stuff crashes. I don't think Bitcoin goes away tomorrow, but I think that it will start to underperform the rest of the crypto market, but also just underperform where people think it would. And that will cause self-reflection. And either Bitcoin falls apart amidst a bunch of infighting and price depreciation. But because of its size and legacy and institutional exposure, etc., it will fall apart slowly enough so the rest of the space gets mass adoption. So it's not like Bitcoin fails and crashes and everything crashes. It's there long enough for other things to gain plenty of users to where people are like, oh yeah, that's not where people just, when Bitcoin falls, people don't even notice because they're paying attention to newer, better things. Or I think the pressure of that, it's either binary. It's either that or Bitcoin will have a resurgence because it will have a self-reflection and fix some things and bounce. And that's kind of the two ways I see it going. Notice both ways. See, good things happen in both ways, which maybe, I don't know if I'm an optimist, but
very optimistic. It's very optimistic.
Here's I don't
what
see it going to zero of the space. That's what I don't see.
Here's what I see, and I think both of your possible futures are possible. I think the latter is more probable than the former. But I think if I'm being pessimistic, and I don't like to be pessimistic, I like to be optimistic. But if I'm being pessimistic, what might happen here? So if you look at Bloomberg at any point during the day, the three crypto tickers that show up are Bitcoin, Litecoin, and XRP. And the reason why I say this is because that is how unsophisticated the rest of the financial markets are when it comes to evaluating what those are not like Bitcoin, only one that's relevant. And I love our Litecoin friends. I'm not going to say anything bad about our XRP friends because if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. But like those two are not relevant compared to Bitcoin. Dash, Ethereum, ENS is more relevant than Litecoin and XRP to global financial instruments, right? So what my point here is if Bitcoin goes through, if it breaks that rainbow, the moment it breaks that rainbow, it's not going to go to zero, but it's going to break confidence in crypto in such a way that we won't see, we'll be fighting over the deck chairs for a long time within the whole crypto ecosystem before it's going to be exactly what happened, if you're old enough to remember, when Ross was arrested. Like we were on a incredible trajectory until Silk Road broke through the public consciousness. I was at SiliconANGLE, an enterprise technology blog, and we were routinely bringing up Bitcoin and decentralization in rooms at HP, at MIT, at other halls of power, at Stanford. We were the first to talk about decentralization in any of those types of environments, and we're doing broadcasts from innovation labs or whatever, right? And we were getting serious people to engage with decentralization as a concept, and blockchain and Bitcoin as specific technologies. And Ross getting arrested set us back a decade. I love Ross, you know that. Like I've dedicated a significant portion of my life to freeing Ross because I believe he was worth it, and ultimately he was right politically and technologically. But what happened with him set us behind 10 years because it turned cryptocurrency into a toxic asset that was associated with hookers and blow, quite literally. Generally, and that was the most informed opinion of Bitcoin.
Yes.
And people that were less informed said, oh, there's assassination markets, there's people killing other people in crypto, like it's for child pornography, it's for all these things that weren't really even happening. So and those were the nice things that people were saying about us. So I would say that Bitcoin staying on the store of value concept and then breaking out of the rainbow narrative is for institutional adoption, which is where most of our capital is coming from right now, going to set us back, maybe not a decade, but a long while, at least 4 to 6 years.
So what perspective on the Ross and the Silk Road thing? I would have liked Ross to never go to prison. I would have liked the Silk Road to be a great proof of concept that somehow avoided the nasty elements. Like you couldn't just buy meth on there, like I kind of would have liked that. But in hindsight, I kind of view the Silk Road as something that put us back 10 years as it advanced us 15. So cancel out the 5 is the difference in a forward momentum, where even though it sucked to have like, oh, this big thing that everyone associated crypto with got nuked, the best years of Bitcoin came immediately after, and no one cared about this stuff until the Silk Road. Now everyone understood the number of people who got into it because they bought drugs on the Silk Road, for example, or they just light stuff like weed, or they heard you could do it, that there was no use for Bitcoin before that. That was the proof of decentralization of what this does. And the same thing happens with, unfortunately, Thorchain and the DPRK hacks, where, which, by the way, just an asterisk to the side note, happy backup day, Thorchain, or however long it's been up. Good to see you back up after the 10 million hack. Hope everything works out. But the DPRK stuff has been horrible for it in some ways, but also that is the reason to care. This is like, if you can't, now it's like, do you hear about those guys? They won't back down on this. Monero has been one of the most panned assets for a lot of these reasons, because it's associated with drug dealing and all this other stuff. Every time there's a big hack these days, you start to see some rumblings in the Monero. Why did Monero pump? Oh, we found someone hacked a bunch of Tether. Like, that was just like a few weeks ago. And like, despite that, and despite a lot of toxicity, anti-Semitism, a lot of nasty stuff in the community, despite the network getting attacked and hacked and being insecure, and despite a bunch of stuff, despite all that, it's one of the best performing assets, and it's kind of taking over a little bit of that former Bitcoin ethos of the peer-to-peer ethos. And it's kind of like the two sides of things, where the more it fails, the less it fails. And one other thing I would point out about like this systemic risk of Bitcoin stumbling, which as much as, again, lots of me would just be like, good, like the Jocko Willink, good kind of thing. I do agree there is a systemic, I wouldn't say certainty, but a risk of, if Bitcoin stumbles, that it could affect things. But other people have noticed this too. People with a lot of money, and they have backup plans, right? It's kind of like Master Yoda saying, no, there is another. There is a certain thing to that. People have gone, I don't know if you've noticed the whole encrypted Bitcoin narrative around Zcash, where all of a sudden Zcash, which always had cool tech, but was, science project-y, not really super adopted, had its own problems, but, it was cool privacy tech, whatever. The last couple years came out of nowhere to pump to the high heavens, and which you don't do that. The transaction volumes don't justify that. There's people, big players moving in a coordinated fashion. Yeah. I'm not saying this is a criticism, by the way, before anyone says, oh, well, there's value. Yeah, I know it's valuable. There's a reason why Dash is adopting its technology for privacy as well. There's a lot of really cool things, but it's clear hearing these big voices like, Barry Silbert, the Winklevoss twins, like Kraken, a bunch of people I've noticed over the last couple years have been laying the groundwork for this encrypted Bitcoin narrative. When it pumped, the maxis have been obsessed with Zcash, not Ethereum anymore. Ethereum had its day. Now they just comment when Tom Lee is more underwater than Sailor, which happens once in a while, whatever. But they don't care about Ethereum anymore. But Zcash is the threat, to where you have maxis today going on shows talking smack about Zcash, not because of anything, but it's the influential people in crypto, their backup plan, their parachute is Zcash, because they don't know if Bitcoin's going to make it. And so they want to have a backup. Well, this is encrypted Bitcoin, so you get to Indiana Jones style swap it out, and then you keep the party going. So it sounds like that's a massive Zcash show, and it's not necessarily, because I think it's a very cool project, and I really like the privacy tech, and I have other opinions about other parts of it. But it's just like as a geopolitical sort of analysis of crypto, you can kind of see, like when you see like who's the rising power in the East, that again the hedge against this and these alliances, you can kind of see, the whole Bitcoin ran the show and is getting ready to stumble, and we could have a resurgence, but there's people that are ready in case it doesn't happen. And they're kind of put that into Zcash, to where when Zcash had that bug exploit, you had a bunch of influential people not just saying little things, but like going to bat multiple times a day saying it's fine, it's going to be fine, like trying to restore confidence in this, because they're clearly invested in not only financial ways. And there's a reason why Vitalik is giving millions to Zcash development organizations and stuff. People like that, like a lot of people are interested in this. And it's like, again, I think this is a case of spontaneous order. I don't think it's active coordination where people get in a dark, schemy room saying, oh, we all need to have a backup. I think it comes together when they start seeing and they start being lobbied by some people, and they all like kind of buy it, and they see the other guy bought it, and like, huh, I guess maybe I'll buy it too, and it just comes together. But there's a clear coalition of the same like Eric Voorhees type people who are OGs in positions of influence and capital, who were pumping Bitcoin they were not small blockers at all, but were pumping Bitcoin far after the block size wars because of this, Bitcoin existential thesis, that are now diversifying that with Zcash a little bit. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's interesting times. I don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah, I mean, like the block size. I mean, on the block size stuff, and I think this is a very interesting thing you're bringing up. I'm going to bring it back to Zcash. I think what was interesting to me, and I don't necessarily think that you have to have big blocks for Bitcoin to be sustainable, but I do think we can no longer call the ossification of core a feature. I think we have to. I think that thesis is that it's a bug, right? And I say that not just because of what the outcome of the block size war, or the current Sailor thing, or the store of value narrative, but like if you just look at the Luke Dash Jr. ocean mining contingent, and you look at what they take ossification to a whole new level, right? And that it's at such a religious fervor that they're not even willing to accept that there could be, flaws in the code that contradict their own ideological narrative of what Bitcoin ought to be, right? So, like, they're not even willing to change things that they recognize could be broken. That's how much the ossification has taken root within some of the core. So I think that is truly the thing. Like, I think you can have intelligent people disagree on block size. I think intelligent people can have some debate on store of value versus means of exchange, but I don't think you can have any type of intelligent debate any longer on the ossification problem. I think that is I think that is the core original sin that we're compounding, that led to Sailor and this almost Terra Luna-esque collapse that we're potentially facing.
Yes.
Now, as for Zcash, I think what's happening there with the impetus, and in a more politically stable environment, it probably would have had a much bigger impact than it did. Is the same thing that happened in that ecosystem is what happened in 2021 to 2-ish in the Ethereum ecosystem, which is very savvy and cypherpunk leaning venture capitalists got in and started playing the game in Ethereum. And it benefited us all for a long time until it stopped benefiting us. And I think they are very intelligently, as you pointed out, looking at Zcash as not necessarily a hedge, although I think that plays into the thinking, but they're like, this is where interesting things are happening, and it's the most investable area where these interesting things are happening, right? It could have easily have been Dash. It could never have been Monero. It could have been a few other privacy projects, but Zcash was just in the right place at the right time to have their basket for investment open. And when money falls into a basket like that and pumps the coin price, it drives gravity. It becomes like a star around which things can orbit, and more fun things start to happen. That's how we got DAOs. That's how we got NFT. I mean, we had DAOs prior to that, but like in terms of the Ethereum kind of idea of what a DAO could be, DAOs got popularized because A16Z put money in the ecosystem, and then a bunch of other VCs did the same thing. Same thing with NFTs, right? That was during that same era. Like that whole run was driven by some smart and savvy venture capitalists going, let's just see what happens when we put some money in this ecosystem. And then a bunch of cool stuff happened, and some of it sucked and some of it was awesome, you know?
Yeah.
And so
Now, where Zcash is different from that is that it's kind of like people have always the capital in the space. There's very few people like you and I guess, who just are purists in that we just want the thing to work in the cypherpunk way, and that's what it is. There's been people like, I think Eric Voorhees is one of the best examples of this, because he's always been very pro Bitcoin as like the North Star of the space, as his justification for what people might call shitcoining on the side, where he creates networks and creates tokens and all the business stuff. And so it's always been the duality of everyone has to virtue signal about Bitcoin because it justifies the rest of the space, and also is a capital that is a sort of value of capital you can use to power the rest of the space while you play around with your business stuff. Now the business stuff, whether it's Base, whether it's Ethereum, Solana, Near, all this host of stuff, you can always build stuff and make money on that part of the space. But they're kind of viewing that the righteous justification thing, because otherwise you're just corpo slop over here. Again, speaking in very big narrative terms, not in accurate terms. So let me just be clear about that. But like the corpo slop part of the space needs cypherpunk values to justify its existence. Bitcoin is a standard bearer of that. Bitcoin's turned into corpo slop, kind of. And they need some righteous North Star still there, and encrypted Bitcoin. It's just like the Mad Men, encrypted Bitcoin kind of thing. It's now privacy coins, privacy coins are that North Star. Now, I would argue that they are practically kind of that North Star, but much more symbolically, they're the North Star. And for some people, that's Monero, but Monero's a little weird and druggy for some of the big money suit people, so they need something else. And one thing that's very notable is Zcash was on an interesting development path that I liked. That was, let's do a hybrid proof of stake model, or maybe move totally into proof of stake or something in order to have a better security and et cetera. Let's add some extra features, like let's add shielded assets, shielded tokens. So now you can do things like that. All that stuff is being cut away now. Now it's just encrypted Bitcoin. Dash is going to get shielded assets using Zcash's tech before Zcash because they want to dumb it down. The proof of stake stuff is off the table now. It's just even the hybrid model off the table. They're just focusing on encrypted Bitcoin, and that's it. Now, why would a company, a corporate structure, why would they try to throw money into an ecosystem that's not an ecosystem? It's as antithetical to ecosystems as possible now. It's just very much just a one thing. It's because you still need that cypherpunk North Star to justify the corpo slop that they've been still doing. And again, seeing that lovingly, obviously, just from narrative perspectives. So that's the thing that Bitcoin did, that now that Bitcoin is just affinity scammed into strategy and all their shitcoins, let's be honest. Now that's like, well, what's the cypherpunk North Star to make you feel good about the rest and sell the rest? Like, Base is super anti-cypherpunk in my humble opinion, but the only reason people use Base
it's almost as anti-cypher. I mean, like Solana and Base I put in the same category. Like it retains a little bit of aura around it because it's associated with Ethereum, but only just, right? Like it is so far behind on the Vitalik happy path of decentralization that I don't think it even registers as anything different from a decentralization perspective than Solana itself.
Yeah,
So,
same thing with Arbitrum. And this is the most, in my, maybe some of this seems like an optimistic take, but it's brutally, this is the brutally cynical part of this is the crypto industry is an affinity scam, and it needs something to have affinity with in order to continue to scam. And so just like Saylor does not deal in Bitcoin, none of his customers buy Bitcoin. He doesn't accept Bitcoin. It's this weird financial product Ponzi thing that has, but he owns Bitcoin and he'll buy some, and it's an affinity scam. And so all this corporate blockchain stuff, you could say is an affinity scam as well. Again, this is the cynical take. I don't know if I don't buy this myself fully, but it's all this stuff because
it was. So I mean, I was there for when the whole blockchain, not Bitcoin narrative took off, and it was. I mean, I'm gonna invoke Ross again, and I want to answer or agree with something you said earlier, which is to say that I don't. I love Ross. I think what he did was absolutely correct and right for the ecosystem, even though it had some negative repercussions. I don't blame him. I blame the federal government. You don't blame the victim. You blame the aggressor, and the federal government was the aggressor. But but back to the point. I was a futurist at IBM. I was actually, prior to me being a futurist at IBM, I was there to watch how they bet the farm on blockchain. They in behind closed doors, like people like Vitalik were there with the futurists and the chief scientists for IBM when they came up with Hyperledger. And the only reason that Hyperledger exists is because the hookers and blow allegations about crypto. And the enterprise was wholly ready to adopt this concept of blockchain because of the benefits that brought about. But then somebody made the connection after Silk Road. They go, you mean permissionless means you can do bad things on the network too? Oh, that's bad for my legal department. We can't have that. And so the only way for them to, not just from a narrative perspective, but from a legal perspective, shield themselves from that type of federal scrutiny was to say, okay, well, we can have permissioned chains, right? Mm-hmm. And it was decentralized asset ledgers or decentralized asset technologies. It was the abbreviation that was used a lot back then. And then you had Hedera Hashgraph that was leading the way with these like proof of stake councils that are now very common. Like Solana is very, from a technology perspective, pretty close to what Hedera and Hyperledger were as technologies in 2015 and 16. Like there is about the same level of decentralization on Solana as your average Hyperledger installation. It's just that we have all been frogs boiled in this ecosystem enough to accept it. But Solana is as exactly as cypherpunk, and Base is exactly as cypherpunk as IBM, which is to say,
I would say so.
Not at all.
At least for Base. Again, I have to do more digging into Solana because one thing that Solana does well is have a delta between structural on paper decentralization and practical decentralization. So I have to I've gotten too many arguments with Justin Bonds over Solana to opine confidently before I get into my actual research. But at least for Base,
people definitely disagree with me on that point. But that is my opinion.
Yes, and that's and I'm glad I have two people that are intelligent in the subject that say the opposite thing, because it's like, all right, it's good to have both. But at least everyone agrees. No one thinks that Base is decentralized. Base is the classic. I mean, just sort of like BNB is the OG affinity scam, but Base is kind of the more Western Binance chain, right? Western affinity scam. And so,
well, I mean, the thing is, Brian came up in the OTC markets. He's a Houston boy. Yeah. Like me and this other dude who I had a falling out with a few years ago. We're the Dallas guys for OTC, and Brian was the Houston OTC guy, right? So between the three of us, and this one dude that had an ATM network down in Austin. If you bought Bitcoin, you were probably talking to one of us. And so Brian knows how to talk, is my point. Like, he knows how to make anything sound cypherpunk because he was there when cypherpunk was the dominant culture. But that does not mean his implementation is anything cypherpunk. No, in fact, it is quite the opposite. He left the OTC market to get hired by Coinbase to bring them the credibility while they were trying to get regulatory compliance and pull up the ladder behind them. Like, they are chiefly responsible for the death of OTC because they made such a big, loud noise about being compliant with the federal government.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, like many such cases, it's always been the case going up. And the thing about crypto is it does not make sense unless it's hard to make it make sense unless you care about freedom and cypherpunk values. And so you need to care about that. And then that is the raison d'etre of the entire space. So therefore, the space that doesn't care about it has to pay lip service. You have to pay lip service to the king. Kind of like, whether you'd say Donald Trump pretending to be a Christian or whatever, because again, you have to be in to get elected in America. That's kind of what you got to do. There's a lot of that. And so I think that, the Bitcoin concept, I would say like BIP1 tenors, even again, name dropping these dudes a lot for, this is your show. Nice, you get some attention. They at least have cypherpunk visions as far as Bitcoin is meant to be money. It's meant to be uncensorable money for the world, and you should run your own node for sovereignty reasons. There's the core tenets of that. And so that's the life of Bitcoin, but the rest is the slop around that is just, if that dominates Bitcoin's future, Bitcoin is not, there's nothing to affinity scam off of at this point. And so you need a new hero. You need a new god to pray to justify your actions. And so for crypto to keep going, and because, again, blockchain tech has not become universal enough to where it's just free floating. It still needs to be a movement, a resistance. It still needs to move forward. And so privacy coins are the new meta for that. And that's why, like, I don't know, maybe I should actually like buy a bunch more of these things or actually put financial action behind these like analysis opinions. I get the feeling in the air that this is the new totem, that the space is at least hedging. And I kind of think that if Bitcoin does succeed, it's going to have to embrace the privacy meta in a way that will be Bitcoin's signaling way of being like, no, we're still the moral bastion of the space. We're still the affinity you want to scam off of, right? And we need that somewhere. We need a front runner. And no, Bitcoin is shaky on that. Who knows? Privacy coins as a class are the sort of hedge, but Zcash is the front runner of that narrative. Now, if Zcash gets knocked to zero, the market can switch to maybe something else. Monero would be a tough sell, as you mentioned, because of the corporate folks can't really get behind it as much. But that's kind of the way it would go.
Yeah, Monero will always be Bitcoin circa the busting of Silk Road. Like, they're never going to shake that culture. They're never going to shake that narrative. That's fine. We need them to exist.
Definitely.
But we don't need to necessarily be part of their community, and we certainly aren't staking our future on their existence.
Yeah, or at least only on the existence. I think it helps to reorient the thing. And it has been funny how a lot of the more cypherpunk Bitcoiners over the years have started to diversify into Monero, whether even if it's just lip service, they're like Bitcoin and Monero. Like, because therefore, when you say Bitcoin and Monero, you shed the Sailorism in Bitcoin. Because you're like, well, Bitcoin and Monero, that's the Bitcoin I'm talking about. I'm talking about the one that's like Monero, not the one that's like corporate crap. And
right,
it's funny how you see these narratives go. But I do think that, I do think that we're in for some interesting times. I'm not going to call Bitcoin's death yet. I think it's got another, I don't know, pessimist. I cannot imagine Bitcoin collapsing in 10 years. I think you could maybe slide from irrelevance, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. And I just want to keep
I mean, like a graceful decline is a positive outcome.
Yes.
I hope that if it's in the decline, if it's in the wane, it is a graceful wane. The pessimist, I get very pessimist or cynical these days, and I can see a probable, but maybe not the most likely, but a probable future where it's gonna screw. And that's just like, that's the story of crypto too. Like we screw ourselves better than anybody else. I mean, like we come up with new ways.
It's also the average crypto user, rather than getting out there and getting a girl, they screw themselves better than anyone else. So,
Jeez, yes,
okay.
Yeah, sadly. But no, like we are the captains of the foot gun in many ways, and I can't count out a sailor and OTC death foot gun to ourselves completely, sadly.
Yeah, we will see. The thing is, one thing I am confident in is in a free market, the best rises to the top. And I think we're always in uncertain times, right? But I do think that with the cat's out of the bag with crypto, the fact that there exist open source code bases that anyone can copy and paste and run a new thing from scratch makes crypto inevitable for now. So I don't know what it'll look like, but as long as there is utility behind building permissionless systems, and now that you can by copy and pasting, unless the whole internet itself gets locked down via age verification things and like all those kinds of nasty things they're trying to do, unless it gets absolutely locked down, I think that crypto will be fine for a while. That's my sort of parting thought on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's levels of existence we can learn to accept. Crypto is not going to zero. Bitcoin is not going to zero in any event. Like, and someone's going to want to own it at some price point. Always, will it be enough for it to exist at the level that we want it to exist? Like, is the trajectory of crypto going to change? Right? We've had I wouldn't say an unbroken, but a pretty solid track record of growth as an industry by all metrics for close to 2 decades now. Will that continue? That's the question that we're asking ourselves. Like, will we have a lost period of growth, or will we fall back into a track of growth after we shake out the weakness? Right? That's the question that we're trying to answer here. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what's going to happen. I know what we need to do if we want to prevent it from happening, and that's what we've talked about, but I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, this is a good time to probably wrap this thing up. It's 2 hours and almost 20 minutes in, so we gave people lots.
Yeah.
Give my clips guy lots of clips to throw out of this, and he did jump into the comments and say, never apologize for dumping on Sailor. It makes for great content. So, it is what it is. Shill o'clock then at long last. What would you like to shill if you were so inclined?
Can I do two things?
Yes.
If you're in the DFW Metroplex, in about 7 minutes, you can buy empanadas from me. And I'll take Dash, I'll take Bitcoin, I'll take fiat. You can look us up on DoorDash. You can look us up on our website, empanadaempire.us. We'll sell you some empanadas with just about anything as payment. But that's been like, I know that's kind of a weird thing to shill on a crypto podcast, but this has kind of been like a passion of mine, building a local business and integrating.
I like the image here.
Core values that I care about, crypto, AI, into something that's just a local business that doesn't require me to exist on a world stage to promote it. And then the other thing is, of course, I've been silently or quietly incubating a new kind of tech consultancy firm. It's the latest iteration of a lot of people that I've been working with for 20 years. Mm-hmm. It's called Decision Science Corp. and we do crypto and AI and other types of tech and marketing solutions. DecisionScienceCorp.com. So, all the things that I've ever talked about on this show are kind of wound up in those two ventures of mine right now.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds pretty good to me. I definitely have seen you be like, I mean, not just because I'm saying nice things because you're on the show right now, but I've clearly you've been on the forefront of things for a while, and a lot of times to your detriment. Like with the early to Bitcoin, early to OTC, seeing the early to the Ethereum stuff, early to embracing AI and personal AI, and I have seen it has been impetus. I mean, I did actually take advantage of a Prime Day sale to beef up my VRAM because I'm going to start doing some more local stuff. So some of your inspiration for that. But there's a little buzzing, by the way, in your background, if you can hear it right now. Oh, I actually can't hear you anymore, just the buzzing. But I think we probably said all we can. The time it takes to fix the thing, I just muted you. The time it takes to fix the thing probably won't do it, but let's just wrap it up. Thanks, everyone, for watching. This has been a great show. Oh, I can't hear you now. Good.
Yeah, I just switched mics. My bad. My microphone died.
Yep. Again, we got cut off just as we were wrapping it up. But I'm going to hit the extro. I'll send you a couple messages after this for fun stuff. But yeah, everyone who's in the Dallas-Fort Worth area buys empanadas and consult with him on AI stuff, especially because he does sovereignty first. And that's something that a lot of the Corpo slot people don't do. He's the affinity, not the scam. So just affinity, not the scam. That's maybe I have to write something on that. But anyway, have a fantastic weekend, everyone. Stay safe out there. Remember, the taxation is theft, that your phone is spying on you, and fiat is a scam. So start living on crypto before it's too late, and run your own local AI stuff if you can. Figure it out. Bye-bye, everyone.
Adam, we're here because we love you. And we're all tired of watching you get abused.
Abused? By who?
Oh, hi, I'm Visa. I charge you 29% interest, 3% foreign fees, and make you wait 3 days to see if your payment went through.
But I thought you were my friend.
No, Dash is your friend. Instant, private, under a penny, and with Dash Spend, you walk into over 100,000 stores and pay like a boss.
All ready? Yeah. Awesome. Thank you very much. Feel alive, guys. This is awesome. Tastes like freedom. And I save 5% by using the app.
That's the Dash High, baby.
Let's go.
Download the mobile wallet, one tap, boom, financial sovereignty.